This is Host Jockeys Unite, the only episodic podcast that strives to not only educate and entertain those in emergency services, but to give an inside peek inside the fire and EMS services to the general public. We are here to leave a legacy for future generations. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Edwards and Jay Gallagher. Hello, welcome to Host Jockeys Unite. I'm your host, Chris Edwards, and this is my co-host, Jay Gallagher.
Hello, fellers and fellettes. It's time to go 10-8 with the show.
In this edition, we're going to be discussing how the fire and EMS services have come full circle. We're going to discuss some of the equipment, technologies, and tactics that were used in the earlier days that more or less were abandoned for something better and then are starting to make a comeback today. We'll talk about the traditions standing in the way of progress. So settle in, relax, and enjoy the show. As I mentioned before, my name is Chris Edwards, and I'm your host. And I began my career in the fire service about 6 or 7 years ago as a volunteer. Since then, I've moved up to a paid position, and where I've become a firefighter, engineer, and EMT. Jay, what positions have you held in the fire service, and how long ago did you begin your career?
I started in 1986 as a fire explorer, and I've held every position up to captain.
Okay, and do you happen to have a funny story you could tell us about?
Oh yeah, I'm going to tell you one on my dad. My dad, God rest his soul, was in the fire department for 41 years. And he started back in the days where they rode tailboard. Well, they were responding to a house fire one night, and the captain hollered back to Dad. They had open cab truck. So the captain hollered back to Dad to catch the hydrant. Well, Dad said he turned around, threw the supply hose over his shoulder, said he had his hand on the grab rail, and back then they had the stack tip nozzles mounted on the tailboard also. Well, the engine back then would just slow down long enough for where the guy riding the tailboard could step off safely. Well, the engine slowed down. Dad stepped off. The stack tip of the nozzle went up and caught up into his coat. The truck took off and proceeded to kind of drag Dad down the road.
Oh no!
They pull up in front of the fire, and there ain't the first bit of hose been laid.
Oh no!
The captain gets out of the truck and goes around to pull the precinct, looks at Dad and says, "What the hell are you doing, John?" He said, "I'm stuck. Get me the hell out of here."
That's a crazy story, but it's funny.
Fellas and fellettes, it's time for the part of the show where we get into the meat and taters, I guess you would say, of the fire service. We're going to be talking about things that have come full circle. We're going to talk about things that have come about and was great in their day, but technology has replaced it, and unfortunately it won't be coming back. Talk about some of the traditions and tactics and different things that has come to light in the past few years as far as advancements in the fire service and EMS service. So, Chris, you want to take off with the first one?
Sure. So I'm going to talk about the thumper, or also well known as an automated CPR device. The thumper was created, you may know better than I do, Jay, how early was it used?
I know it was back in the used back in the 70s. How far before that, I'm not sure. Because I remember the first time I ever seen it was watching Emergency, and my dad knew what it was, and he told me what it was all about and how it worked and whatnot, and so that's as far back as I can date it, is mid-70s.
Okay. Well, the original thumper device was basically a piston that was put on the chest and actuated by compressed gases, usually used by like an oxygen cylinder, and it would do mechanical CPR on a patient. Whereas the modern day thumper device is called the Lucas device, and it's operated by batteries. Now that's two different devices made by two different companies. The thumper is still in production today. However, the Lucas is more automated, is more prominent, is the more prominent, more well known of the automated CPR devices.
And there for a long time, correct me if I'm wrong, they had actually went away from using the thumper, and here recently in the past few years, the Lucas device has come back out.
It has. They went away from the thumper back to manual compressions, and then now a lot of agencies are coming back with the Lucas device, and everybody thinks it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. When in reality, it's not really anything new. It's just an updated design of an old product.
Now, henceforth, technology stepping in and kind of taking over what the old mechanical technology, which was the latest and greatest thing back in the day. So, and it also the Lucas device or the thumper, either one, would free up your paramedic or your EMT to set up IVs or to get vital, not get vitals, but get oxygen going. It's like having a third set of hands on the unit.
Exactly, and survival rates have increased. I don't have any data as far as actual numbers, but it's been proven that survival rates from cardiac events from using the the thumper or the Lucas device has actually increased because it's giving constant, good quality, good depth chest compressions when patients need it the most. The sooner you can get that device on a patient, the better their chance of survival is. And like you said, it'll free up your hands to bag a patient if they need like ventilations or do an IV to start an IV to start fluids or drugs or whatnot.
Yeah. In your research on the Lucas device, did you see anything as to why they went away from it?
I couldn't find that. I think a lot of it was cost because it was cost prohibitive back in the day, and a lot of agencies just didn't want to pay the money for it. They didn't see the need for it, and then the mortality rate started going up from human CPR, and now they're seeing where it's becoming, the devices are becoming more cost effective now, but they also, the data is coming out showing that it's actually saving lives better because they don't get tired. They do perfect compressions every time.
Yeah, and if anyone's ever done CPR for longer than 2 or 3 minutes, that will tire you out.
Oh yes, it will.
In some cases, you think you're going to need CPR before it's over with.
Right.
Well, the next thing I'll talk about is your nozzles. Back in the day, all they used was smoothbore nozzles. And then the advancements come along in the technology where they had the adjustable nozzles, where you left for life, right for reach. And in between, the 30-degree pattern was what you fought fire with. Well, the fog nozzles were used for a long time. The very first nozzle I ever had in my hand was a turbojet nozzle. And the turbojet actually had a little plastic ring on the very end of the nozzle that spun when you open the nozzle up. And that helped create your fog pattern. Well, little did they know that spinning created a low pressure, which caused the fire to come in and to your fog pattern, literally touch the tip of the nozzle and go right back out the bottom. And if your engine for some reason had a hiccup or you had a hiccup in your water supply, then that brief second you could get burnt. So Task Force Tips comes along and they invented a nozzle that did not have the spinning piece on the end. And it was shown that you could flow just as much water with a task force tip nozzle and an 1 3/4 line as you could a 2.5. Great. But still, you had the issue of the penetration of the thermal column in a fire. If you get a good hot fire, it's hard to get that with a adjustable nozzle. So they backed up and said, okay, let's try this. Let's start putting smoothbores on our attack lines. Now, here's something that some of you may know, some of you may not know. I watched a bunch of videos in training and researching and whatnot, and I used to be against initial attack with a smoothbore. Dead set against it, because if you get into trouble, you don't have your left for life for your protection. And I've made the joke more than one time. What are you going to do if you get in trouble? Hang your thumb over the end of the nozzle. Well, with the smoothbores, you don't have to go into the room nearly as far. You have the penetration of the thermal column, and you keep your thermal balance in check, where you can still have good visibility. And if you have a victim inside that room, then you're not roasting them with the steam.
Yeah, you have a chance of having a viable victim.
Exactly. To where if you go in with your adjustable nozzle on the 30-degree, just like we've been taught, and you hit it, yes, it puts the fire out, but that thermal balance is going to drop right to the floor. You're not going to have any kind of visibility, and you're going to, any victim that might be inside, is going to be parboiled. So now everyone has started going back towards the smoothbore nozzle attack, which, like I said, I was against it first, but after I seen these videos in training, and my opinion of that has changed. Still kind of wonder what you do if you get, if something happens and you get in trouble, but by you not having to go into the fire room as far, you should be you should be all right. And if anything happens, have a quick, viable way or means of egress.
Right, and not to get into a 5-hour-long discussion on fire science, but the water droplet size is different in the smoothbore versus the fog nozzle. The smoothbore, the droplets are smaller and packed together more tighter, so you get better penetration.
A smoothbore is a solid stream of water. There's nothing in there breaking it up. It's just one solid stream of water until you get to what they call the breakover point, where it's the top of the rainbow, so to speak, and then it's when it starts breaking down. But if you're in a room and you're fighting fire, that's one solid stream of water.
Right.
The adjustable nozzle, task force tip versus turbojet versus the Akron brass. Now those, when you're using your fog, the way they're made is the makeup of the nozzle. The water droplets are different sizes, but the adjustable nozzle is great. I'm not downing it, but I'm a walking, talking, living proof of steam burns. And it was turbojet nozzle, thermal balance dropped, and you've seen my neck.
Yeah.
And before anyone jumps on the box and says, well, you should have had your hood on, we didn't have hoods then. They hadn't come out yet.
Right. And another advantage to the smoothbore versus the fog nozzle, the smoothbore offers a lot less friction loss, and it requires less pressure to gain usage. Smoothbore only takes between 60 to 80 psi, where a fog nozzle generally takes between 120 to 135 psi to maintain its momentum.
Exactly, which makes a smoothbore easier for one person to handle versus the adjustable nozzle, especially if you're using a 2.5 as an attack line. It makes it a whole lot easier to use. But then again, I'm a big boy, so I've never really had too much of an issue. But someone like a smaller built firefighter wouldn't have near as much trouble with the smoothbore as they would the adjustable nozzle.
Right. And I'm going to assume that a lot of departments are like mine. On our engines, we carry one cross lay with a smoothbore and one with a fog nozzle, so you can pick and choose what you want to use if the situation warrants it.
Yeah, I think a lot of departments are doing that now. One like yours is doing. I know I think Burlington still uses the adjustables on both of theirs, but they're on both of their crosslays. But on the hoses on the back that they pull off is smoothbore.
Right. We're currently running Minuteman lays on our crosslays, and like I said, one of them has a smoothbore, one of them has a fog nozzle, and then on our trash line on the front, it's just specifically just a straight up fog nozzle, because that doesn't really necessarily matter so much in a car fire or a dumpster fire or something, field fire.
Yeah, I love field fires. You chase it for a mile, and the wind will shift, and it'll chase you back 3 miles.
Right. So the next technology or piece of equipment that we're going to talk about is the biophone. And those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's basically a VHF radio or UHF, depending on the frequency, and built in a box. And it was orange. It was made by Motorola, and it offered two-way radio communications to the hospital, as well as you could send EKG telemetry to the hospital as well. Again, like I said, it was made by Motorola and was made most famous on the TV show that we discussed last week, Emergency, where you would see Johnny Gage get on the radio and talk to the hospital to get their directions. Well, the biophone is not coming back ever. It was replaced by standing orders and protocols that EMS personnel now follow when medical control is needed. Basically, preset directions that we use, that we have, that things that we can do already that don't require any kind of medical interaction. If medical control is needed, we contract them over the radio in the truck or even on our cell phone, which goes to a dedicated line in the hospital that's recorded. So, telemetry, we can still send telemetry, over vehicle Wi-Fi or some other kind of like radio technology that's built into the truck, depending on the system that you're on. But paramedics are able to interpret EKGs in the field, so even then, it's very rare that we have to send any telemetry to the hospital.
Yeah.
And
you're more up on radios and everything, whatnot than I am. Is it possible to send telemetry via a cell phone?
Not that, I'm sure it's possible, but not in any system that I've ever worked on. On both EMS systems that I work at right now, the telemetry is done over Wi-Fi data, over like the internet. We have iPads on both of our trucks, and one system uses a mobile data terminal or an MTD. The other one, we just send it via the internet from our cardiac monitor. It hooks to the Wi-Fi on the truck and then sends it over the internet from the monitor to the hospital.
Gotcha. Kind of like plugging a USB cable into the monitor, and it goes out through Wi-Fi type thing.
Yeah, except it's all it's all wireless. The monitor hooks up wirelessly into the truck, and then the magic happens, and it sends it to whatever it does. It magically sends it to the hospital where the doctor can interpret it. But again, that's very rare unless there's something that the paramedics really have any question on that's strange. Paramedics can interpret the EKGs and make decisions on their own. The protocols, allow for that.
Gotcha. The wonders of modern technology.
Exactly. So Jay's going to cover next the use of SCBAs in the 70s and 80s versus today, or 60s and 70s versus today.
Back when my dad started on the fire department, they had 2 SCBAs on the truck. And the thing back then was the leather lung firefighter. You go in with, without a SCBA on and fight the fire. If you put one on, you were considered a wuss. And if you were when you didn't wear one and you were the first one to throw up, you were a wuss. And the only time that you could get away with wearing a SCBA not be considered a wuss was in a hazmat situation. And then with only 2 SCBAs on the truck, you're not really going to do a whole lot of good. Just back up 100 feet past the Blue Canaries and hang tight till regional hazmat shows up. But nowadays, NFPA 1981 standard for SCBA, establishing respiratory protection and functional requirements, which is current 2019, it makes it mandatory for you to wear SCBA on anything except for a woods fire or a brush fire, and which is good. The first time they definitely take getting used to. The first time I ever put one on, I'm not going to lie to you about it. I was excited. I put the air pack on, went in, threw up in the mask. That's why I learned never eat more than what your mask can hold. But today versus back then. Back then, your houses had what they call legacy wood in it, and when I say legacy, I mean like pine, oak. Things like that. There wasn't the plastics and the in it today, or in it back then, that there is today.
Well, not only the houses, but the building materials of the houses themselves, but also the construction materials of the contents, such as furniture, couches, and whatnot, is all synthetic materials now.
Exactly. And back then, your time to flash over then versus today was a little bit longer. And that's because of all the synthetics, heats quicker, and, you get to the point of flashover quicker, which your SCBA will help you if you get caught in one. But if you do get caught in a flashover, you better move quick, because it used to be the 6 foot rule, where you crawl into a room no further than 6 foot, because they figure that if it flashes over, your turnout gear will hold for long enough for you to turn around and crawl back out. And the time limit versus the speed of the firefighter crawling with all of his turnout gear on, 6 foot and 30 seconds.
Yeah, I don't know if that's exactly true anymore. I don't remember what the current numbers are. I don't remember from class, but that's close.
Now remember, fellas and fellettes, I'm a fire and rescue dinosaur. So if that's changed, let us know. down in the comments or in the email or whatnot. Just bleep it down there. But that's what it was when I was coming through the academy. And it's just amazing to me how it's changed so much that they made it mandatory to wear SCBA on everything except for your woods or your brush fires.
Well, go ahead.
And you know, if you ever been to the Fallen Firefighters Memorial Weekend and got one of their memorial books and just read the stories of the firefighters that had passed, a lot of them are cancer. A lot of them are older firefighters, and I can just about guarantee you it was the quote unquote leather lung firefighter not wearing his SCBA. So, wear your SCBAs, folks.
Well, yeah, to circle back a little bit, not only is it mandatory per the NFPA and OSHA standards for, insurance reasons and safety reasons, it's actually physically impossible to survive in an IDLH environment now because the fires burn hotter, for one, although the SCBAs don't really protect you from heat. But the biggest thing is the off gases from the building materials themselves, and specifically like furniture. The off gases from furniture have all these synthetic materials and have chemicals in them such as hydrogen cyanide, hydrogen chloride, carbon monoxide, things that will kill you in about 4 to 5 seconds. So you have to have respiratory protection on if you're in there. Otherwise, you're not going to make it out, period. Versus, the legacy construction where it was all like natural fibers like cotton and wood, things like that stunk when they burned, but they weren't overly toxic.
Yeah, I never will forget. My dad used to sneak me on the few fire calls with him when I was little, and we pulled up to a house fire, and it was pushing that kind of brownish gray smoke, and I know it sounds cliche, and I know it sounds like a movie line, but I'll never forget it. My dad said, "Yeah, this is gonna taste like crap." And he gets out of the truck, pulls the freaking neck, goes in, no SCBA, puts the fire out, comes back. Fast forward 10 years, when I joined the fire department, and we rolled up on a house fire, and it's pushing that nasty tar black smoke.
Mm-hmm.
And the first words out of my dad's mouth, "Got your SCBA on?" And
he was wise enough to know the difference.
Yeah. And, it's just kind of, odd here seeing him going in with no air pack, just hip boots, long coat, and his helmet,
right,
and a pair of gloves. And and what made it even funnier, he would come out of the fire, and he'd be coughing and spitting and sputtering. He'd reach in his shirt pocket, pull out a cigarette, and light it, and he'd quit coughing, just like you turn on a light switch.
Huh.
Darndest thing I ever seen.
That's quite very interesting.
Yeah. He'd sit on the tailboard, he'd take a drag off that Marlboro Red, and he'd look at me and say, that's good. Whatever you say, Pop.
Exactly. So the next point we're going to bring to talking about, he used to say that back then only department may have only 1 or 2 SBA systems, and if you weren't, you were considered a sissy. That leads me to our next point, which is Nomex hoods. The adoption and the use of Nomex hoods. What are the pros and cons? Flash hoods used to have, when they first came out, huge had huge issues when they first came out, and firefighters resisted wearing them. Jay, what were those issues?
Uh, when they first come out, it was fit issues around your face piece of your SCBA. Uh, they just had like they looked more like ninja masks than anything. The only thing you could see, was your eyes. And they corrected that, and they got it fixed to where your face piece would be, out of the mask fully. But the biggest thing was the old timers resisting them because they would be of the opinion, well, if I can't feel my ears getting warm, how do I know when it's time to get out? I had one person say, well, I can't feel my ears ringing when I have it on. Well, the reason your ears are ringing, Dodo, is because your blood pressure shot so far out of whack that it's ringing in your ears.
Exactly.
And like I said, when I first got on the fire department, we pulled our collars up, velcroed around the piece around the front, ear flaps down on our helmets, and that's how we rolled until the Nomex hoods come in. At first, I really didn't have an opinion of it, but as time grew on, and I realized, hey, if I'd had a Nomex hood when I got steamed, my neck wouldn't look like it does today.
Right. And that's something that is actually could circle back to our question of the day, or question of the show rather. Ask the firefighter. That's something that you've seen come into change in your career.
Yeah. And and I've even heard some people say, well, that just adds more time to me getting dressed out to fight fire.
Really, it doesn't.
Is 3 seconds worth getting burnt?
No. And it's funny you mention that because in class they say you need to be fully dressed and on air in 2 minutes. But in reality, it's like you've got time to get dressed out, yeah. especially if you do it in the truck.
The way I used to do it was I'd have my boots and bucket pants right there by the door. I'd put them on, and the way I had my coat set up was it was laid out on the back of the seat with the sleeves already going through my SCBA straps, to where when I put my coat on and pulled it up, my SCBA was basically already on. All I had to do was flip the lap belt, or the waist belt rather, and cinch down the shoulder straps. And it don't take it don't take that but 2 maybe 3 seconds to put that hood on.
Exactly.
And, so I've always been taught that slow is fast.
Mm-hmm.
To where now, when my oldest son first got on the fire department, well, actually before that, you're gonna laugh at this, but his mother was on the volunteer side because we were a combo department. And when my oldest boy was 12 years old, he was big enough to fit in his mom's turnout gear. And him and I would race to see who could get dressed out the quickest. And he kept, trying to fly, get his stuff on, he wanted to beat Dad, And I'm sitting there basically taking my time. And I beat him every time. And
because if you get fast, you get fumble fingered and you start fumbling with buckles and you can't.
Yep. And there's no place in the fire department for knuckle fumbling.
Right. And when I dress out, first thing I throw on is my hood because it's in my boots. I pull it out of my boots, throw my hood on, jump in my boots, throw my coat on, blah, 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 and go from there. because your hood has to go inside your coat anyway. So that's the first thing I throw on.
Yeah. The funny thing of it is, when they first come out, everyone would put their coat on, zip it up, or Velcro it up, snap it up, however you had it at the time. Pull the collar up, put that Velcro strap around that Velcro piece around the front, and then put the hood on over the top of that.
So it would go over the outside?
Yeah,
Huh.
I've seen that. I've seen that done, and those of us who went, went through the academy and all like that, and come out, and then it was easy for us to catch on. Hey, you don't do that. You put it inside your coat, because if you put it outside, you're not fully encapsulated in your turnout gear like you need to be.
Right.
And you can still get, keeping it on the outside, you can still get steam burns and all like that. And I want to tell you something, and I've learned from experience. They will protect you, but they will burn. I was at a training burn one time, and I was on the crew that helped get everything set up, and they had a guy that wanted to see how we done it. So we took him in with us, let him see. And we didn't realize it, but he had picked up a can of diesel fuel and threw it on the fire.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it hit the fire and it barked out, rolled the ceiling, and the edge of my hood got burnt. I didn't, because I had it on, but the hood burnt. So the hood done its job.
Exactly.
So
I guess the point to sum that whole point up is that hoods are now pretty much universally accepted as part of PPE, and they're helpful, and they're more and more often due to data showing that wearing them helps to reduce the risk of firefighter cancer, especially these new particulate hoods. It helps to reduce the risk of cancer and steam burns, and mainly through the pushes from organizations like the NFPA and OSHA.
yeah, you want to see someone from OSHA have a stroke? Tell me you don't have a hood.
Exactly.
So, but bottom line, fellas and fellettes, wear all your gear
And wear it correctly.
and wear it correctly. Whether it takes a minute or 2 seconds to put it on, wear all your gear, wear it correctly, because you got a family to go home to.
Exactly.
A family that loves you. So the next portion is tradition. Now, in my opinion, and you know what they say about opinions.
Yeah.
There's, no matter how much we think outside the box, technology improves our business, there's always going to be tradition somewhere.
Right.
To give you an example, and it kind of goes back to the, full circle. We started out with the helmets that look like the Carnes 1010. Okay, back in the day, my dad's helmet looked like that.
Mm-hmm.
His first helmet was made, believe it or not, of pot metal.
That seems like that would get hot.
Yeah. Well, here you're gonna laugh at this one. His second helmet, which was approved by NFPA and OSHA at that time, had Mattel stamped in the brim of it.
Oh yeah, you were showing me that helmet.
Yeah. But then we go to the salad bowls.
Or turtle shells.
Yeah, the turtle shells, salad bowls, you know, and we go with them for 10, 15 years. Then we start reverting back towards the Carnes 1010.
Or the 1044, Sam
Or,
Houston's,
yeah, now,
New Yorker.
yeah, now the leather helmets have been there all along. It's just department choice. Now, my wife and my boys got me a leather helmet for Father's Day, right when I made captain. And I'm gonna tell you something. I would rather wear that leather helmet than the turtle shell any day of the week.
Right.
And it's the leather helmet and that style of helmet. Yes, it's tradition, but to me, that helmet felt safer than that turtle shell did. I don't know if it was because of the weight of it, or how it fit my head,
You
or
get helmet headaches.
you're gonna do that with any helmet.
Yeah.
But it's I just felt safer with that helmet on, and I ain't gonna begin to tell you how many pairs of Borks I've melted, but.
Well, up until the longest time, Borks weren't even NFPA standard regulated.
I know, but they got cleared to use the Borks. I think FDNY had a lot to do with that.
Yeah,
because that's all they put on their helmets was the Borks. But that's kind of the tradition that's one of the traditions that's gonna definitely stay, because in the United States, the Leatherhead Mafia is all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And you even got one too.
Oh yeah.
But now you tell me, does your leather feel more safer than the turtle shell?
It doesn't feel as wobbly. And it feels like it fits better, true.
So, I mean, that there's a retired fire chief that I know personally. I've worked with him on a bunch of fires. I have great respect for this man, and his name is Chief Greg Clark. He was on Kill Double Hills Fire Department when we were living at the coast, and I was talking to him about it, and he said that it goes like this, Jay. The fog nozzles are going to make a comeback, and there will always be room for tradition in the fire service. And I'm like, that makes sense, But he's also the one that threw a chicken leg at me at a fire school we went to, and then called me chicken leg for the rest of the class. But anyhow, moving on.
So the other style of helmets that we haven't covered yet are the Euro helmets, or European. What do you think about those?
They're great for motorcycle riding. I really don't have an opinion, or I can't give a true, honest opinion, because I've only seen them at seminars and at Newton's Fire Safety.
Right.
And I've never wore one in an actual fire situation. There's one thing that I do like, but I can also see where it would become a hindrance. Is some of them have a voice activated mic.
Oh yeah, the integrated comm system. That's what I was going to cover. But go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, that's I like that, but honestly, like I said, I can't give a honest opinion on the gyro helmets because except they look like motorcycle helmets, and because I've never used one.
And I'm in the same boat. I've never used one. I can't give an honest opinion either. But other than I think they look ugly as sin. But from people locally that I've talked to, some that have used them, people have said, it's one of those either you love it or you hate it kind of things. I've talked to people who love them and said that's the best thing ever because they're form fitting and they're lightweight and um, feels like you're not wearing anything at all. And then there's others that say you hate it because when you're wearing it, you sound like you're inside of a seashell. Everything echoes like a conch shell.
Hmm.
So that's the two opinions that I've gotten on that.
I got you. I guess in order for us to be able to, give I don't know if you want to call it evaluation or opinion or whatever the terminology you would want to use there, we would have to put one on and use it.
Well, I guess MSA, if they're listening, needs to send us a couple for testing purposes then.
Yeah. Yeah. MSA, you want to sponsor us? Cheap plug there. Sorry, y'all.
For real. So the next topic under the tradition category that we're going to cover is probably going to stir up a pot, but it's going to be the EV fire apparatus versus the traditional diesel fire apparatus. Take it away, Jay.
I've done some research on the EV engine that at Los Angeles City has recently put into service. It's built by Rosenbauer, and it's got flaws, and it's got good points. I want to talk about the good first. It has a low center of gravity, so you can, less chance of rollover with it.
Corner's better.
The batteries for it are actually on the bottom of the truck instead of sitting up high. And the batteries for this thing is huge. So they put them right on the bottom. And then the water tank, traditionally has been sitting above the rear axle up high. Well, they took the water tank in this one and put it on top of the batteries, which to me kind of don't make any sense because water, electricity, zippity doo dah, you'll go home, looking like Albert Einstein. But as far as keeping the center of gravity low, that's a good idea.
Exactly.
The truck itself will lower to a height of 7 inches off of the ground for the vertically challenged firefighter to be able to get in and out easily. And then when everybody's in, it'll raise itself back up to a road ride of 14 inches. And if you have to take said truck off road, it'll raise itself up to 14 inches. And that I kind of find that, a good quality. The cab of the truck is built to where a firefighter who is 6'2" will not have to hunch over to get in and out. And where the engine tunnel used to be in the truck is now more built like an office per se. And the driver and the officer's seats will rotate around to where they can see the firefighters in the back and they can, rehab.
Use it for command center.
Yeah, command center, whatever you need. Instead of using rear view mirrors, they use cameras, and it's set up just like the rear view mirrors, but they're inside the cab in the corner of the A posts, and what would be the rear view mirrors on the outside is actually the cameras, and that gives 180 degree, full 360 degrees look at the truck. They've got a computer screen that they can, look at through the rear at the rear of the truck, and they can even look over the top. Now, how they pull that one off, I'll never know, but you can actually see the very top of the truck. Their crosslays are low to the ground for lower center of gravity. They got the water turret up front. On the roof is designed kind of like the airport crash trucks. Excuse me. To where car fire, dumpster fire, brush fire.
It's remote controlled.
Yeah, it's remote control. Don't have to get out of the truck immediately. I'll just hit it with that. And those are the good things that I found about it. The bad things, or the cons of it, you got 3 hours running time on your batteries before they're down to 20%. At 20%, a diesel generator / engine kicks in and recharges your batteries. Now, if you run another 3 hours, if you're at a big scene on batteries, that diesel generator / engine takes over the rest of the operation. So that's kind of defeating the purpose of the electric engine and cutting down on the emissions.
Right.
So it's basically a hybrid,
right?
Instead of like full electric like they advertise.
And I even read that the diesel engine actually can be used like a normal hybrid car, where it'll kick on if the batteries get low if they're running down the road, so it doesn't just quit. So it's actually a hybrid vehicle, like you said, not a true EV vehicle.
Yeah. I wonder if that could be considered false advertising. But anyway, they received the engine, they were putting their equipment on it, and before that truck hit the street, it already had issues. It had a water leak. And if you remember correctly, where did I say the water tank was on that truck?
Above the batteries.
Above the batteries. And it started an electrical fire. So they had to take it back to Rosenbauer for them to get that fixed. And that would be my biggest concern right there.
Well,
would be the electricity and the water and,
Well, look at it this way, too. Can you imagine, that truck better have a good heck of a warranty on it, because can you imagine the maintenance cost on those? I know, like on a regular diesel engine, or depending on the setup, it has at least 2, if not 4 batteries for cranking batteries on a regular diesel fire engine.
Yeah.
Our tanker has 6 batteries, and we had to replace 6 batteries, and it was $1,400, and that was just a regular old, deep cycle starting battery for heavy duty trucks. It was $1,400 just to replace those. Can you imagine how much those lithium ion batteries cost to replace when they go bad, or a truck that's chock full of electronics, when something breaks, how much it would cost to fix? All the computers and screens and everything.
Well, not only that, they've been having a lot of trouble with the lithium-ion batteries catching fire.
In general, yeah.
And, they continue to off-gas. And I read somewhere where a vehicle fire, a normal vehicle fire takes 1,000 gallons of water to put out, maybe. Okay? Well, some of these newer cars with the lithium-ion batteries takes up to 40,000 gallons of water.
Yeah.
And some of them have had to been submerged in water. While they were underwater, they reignited and burnt underwater.
Yeah, and a lot of the common bigger cities, you see these issues with the those type of batteries with like the electric bikes and the electric scooters that people just run around town on.
Yeah. Now let's just say, for instance, that that big daggone battery on that fire truck catches on fire, off gases, and continues to burn. Imagine the amount of. I mean, don't even try to hit it with with a hose stream from an engine. Just push it off into the Pacific Ocean.
All right,
I mean,
and then long term thinking, think about the hazmat incident it causes. I mean, as far as like those batteries, those lithium ion batteries go dead. What happens to them? Yeah, they'll take them to a recycling plant, but all that lithium that they're mining for these electric cars and these big trucks that are electric, those batteries have to go somewhere when they're dead, when they have no more life in them. So, is that really any greener? Is that any more cleaner for the environment when we have all these stockpile of batteries laying around that's, in the future?
very good point. And what is the life expectancy on the battery of this engine anyway?
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't find any data on it.
So, I mean, you spend, you spend $1 million on a hybrid engine. Okay,
Right?
your battery lasts 10 years.
Hopefully.
And I mean, what's the gain of spending? Let's just say, for instance, for the sake of conversation, $10,000 on a new battery for this truck. Okay.
Right.
Now, back up 10 years to when you first got this electric truck. If you'd have went with a standard engine, standard, Pierce Enforcer, let's just say, okay, you spend less money for a longer term, because as long as that engine can pass pump test, you can run it till the wheels fall off of it, as long as it passes that pump test.
Right.
So I mean, what's the game? If that makes any sense. Because we already know that you're not doing a whole lot for the environment, because after 3 hours on the scene, a diesel generator is going to kick on, and that's
Right.
going to put the off gassing from the generator into the air. So I mean, is it really worth it?
Yeah, and you could go hours talking about, you know, cost versus, miles per gallon. Do you get better performance out of the battery versus, diesel being diesel at $5 to $6 a gallon now? But in my book, I still think traditional diesel trucks are still better. But
yeah, me too. And I don't want it to seem like I'm, that we're not thinking out the box on this one, because I can see a time where that's what it's going to be. But the technology and versus cost efficiency, has got to meet in the middle somewhere.
right, because there are not a lot of, especially smaller departments, that are going to pay $1 million for a fire truck that you're going to have to pay $10,000 for a battery in 10 years or less. And there's probably at least 6 to 8 big batteries in those electric trucks. I don't know how many there are, but I'm sure there's a lot more than just one or two.
Oh, in some of these smaller rural departments, and I'm not knocking them one bit, but they're running on hand-me-down equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And and if they ain't gonna be able to do it unless they, some kind of big time population boom happens and they start running on a tax base, and then maybe. But that I can take you right now to a place just outside of where we used to live down at the coast. Their first out engine is a 1957 Ford.
Still,
but it passes pump test.
yeah.
And honestly, it looks just as good as it did the day it rolled. It rolled up brand new. They take very good care of it, but they're not going to be able to handle that price tag.
No.
Excuse me. But I'm with you. The diesel powered's still gonna
win out.
Yeah, in the long run, definitely. I mean, short term, yeah, the electric might be great, but diesel's gonna get it long term. And as far as I know, LA City is the only department in the United States that's got one of those electric trucks.
Well, maybe electric engine, but you got to remember, like we talked about on our last episode, the Alamance County Heavy Rescue is also electric as well.
Yeah. The big ugly green thing.
So, gonna switch gears here and change topics and talk about some old school tailboard riding. Back in the day, in the glory days of firefighting, it was nothing for a firefighter to report to the station, get on his turnout gear, and jump on the tailboard of an apparatus and go zooming off to a call. Now that's a practice that has faded into history due to insurance reasons and OSHA safety regulations. You may see a firefighter on the back of a truck, in a parade, but never ever going to a call anymore. Jay, what are your opinions on this?
You know how to tell a happy tailboard rider?
How's that?
Count the bugs on his helmet shield and in his teeth. Now, I kind of wish that we could still ride tailboard. But that's just the tradition side of me.
Yeah.
The apparatus nowadays don't really have a tailboard anymore. They just have a step or like a ladder that you would see on the back of a camper trailer.
Yeah.
To climb up to the hose bed to repack your hose. I was lucky, and the reason I say that was it had always been a dream of mine. I heard my dad talk about riding tailboard and all the glamour, glory and glamour and that goes along with it. And I always dreamed of getting to roll up in front of a fire scene on the tailboard with my pop. And in case y'all haven't noticed it by now, when it comes to firefighting, my pop was my hero.
No.
Him and Vinny Dunn, but we'll get into that later. We had a large restaurant catch on fire one night, and it was mutual aid for us. So on our mutual aid calls, we took our second out piece, and me and my dad, we went POV to the call. And where we parked was at a small bridge. It had a place where you could go out there and fish and everything, so it had a big parking lot there, so we parked there in the parking lot. And it was still maybe a quarter of a mile from where we parked, where this restaurant was at. Well, we got our gear on and we started walking up the road to the fire, and heard someone behind us blew the air horns. Turned around, it was our second out piece, and they slowed down. And Dad and my pop, he looked at me and says, "Come on." We got on the tailboard, and I got to ride up to, I lived my dream.
Right.
I got to roll up to a fire with my pop riding tailboard.
Which, that's pretty cool. It's not.
Now, granted, we wasn't going balls to the wall, 10, 15 mile an hour maybe.
Basically parade speed.
Yeah, pretty much. And it was kind of funny when the guys that was there fighting fire that seen us. They started cheering, which was kind of what are you cheering about? Then it dawned, hey, you're riding tailboard, dum dum.
Ha.
Evidently I wasn't the only one that had that wish or dream, but is they come out. I don't know, maybe late 70s, early 80s. They had the straps that you could get on the tailboard and put on attached to the crossbar, and basically you just lean back into the strap. It was kind of like putting on a life belt and locking in to the ladder and leaning back type deal. And that was supposed to keep you safe. And then they come around and put the subway hooks, for lack of better words, on the crossbar, and you held on to that also. And it was kind of like the fire service was trying to, get the last dig in at NFPA and OSHA, and trying to say, hey, we still gonna ride tailboard.
We're gonna make this safer, so nanner.
Yeah, but it didn't work. Firefighters still fell off of the tailboard. Firefighters still died. So it was like the fire service, raised the white flag. Okay, you win, and it was no more.
Exactly.
And like you said, like you mentioned, it's good for parade. You can do it for parades and stuff like that. But it's got to be an older piece in order to do that, because, like I said, the newer pieces, they got just barely enough room to step up, or no step at all, and the RV camper ladder to get up to the hose bed.
So,
but you see pictures of the firefighters, going down the road on the tailboard, and it's all glam and glory, but snow, rain, cold weather, wind, it had to be miserable at times.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I'd rather ride in the cab that's got heater or an air conditioner and not get out in the elements till I absolutely have to.
Yeah, the only bad thing of it is when my pop started, the engine that he started on was an open cab. So,
open cab, yeah.
Yeah, darned if you do, darned if you don't. So, how about you? What are your feelings on tailboard?
Well, I mean, pretty much covered it. It's something that's faded in history. It'll never come back because it's just too dangerous, and insurance regulations won't allow for it. But still find it kind of ironic that firefighters can't ride tailboard, but yet garbage men do all the time. Of course, garbage men don't ride their garbage trucks balls to the wall either. So,
no, this is true too. But you're right. If they can do it, why can't we do it? At least give us enough room to ride in a parade.
Right.
So, the next topic I want to discuss is the the firefighting robot versus the interior firefighter.
Yeah, we might have a little disagreement on this topic, the two of us, but we'll go for it anyway. So, the Thermite RS3, which is manufactured by Howe & Howe, it was the first robotic firefighting vehicle in the United States, and is capable of flowing water or foam at 2,500 gallons per minute. It's also equipped with a camera or cameras and a plow that can push debris, including cars, out of the way, as well as a winch that can pull 8,000 pounds. It can clear a safe path for firefighters to operate where otherwise hazardous and extinguish fires in very bad environments. Due to its size, however, it can't get into small places like a person can. And it also carries a price tag of nearly $277,000. So it won't be replacing any human firefighters anytime soon.
I can see a lot of pros, believe it or not, and I can see some cons.
Right.
The pros being, hazmat situations,
Explosions, bombs.
yeah, exactly, terrorist type incidents. The where there's really no survivable space left in the structure, and you don't want to put your firefighters at risk, send that in.
Right. It's good for, buildings that are in danger of collapsing.
Correct.
Because, yeah, it's $277,000, but if a building falls on top of a robot or a machine, it can be replaced, but people can't.
Exactly. And, the flow of progressive might not like that phone call, but, what's a human life versus a robot?
Exactly. And go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and there's so many different applications for it from what I was reading. I mean, they're almost limitless. I mean, you have a hostage situation. It could be used for law enforcement as well. Somebody's shooting at you. You can send it out there and, do something with it to help them mitigate the gunman.
Give them 1,000 gallon a minute drink of water.
Right. Extremely hot, hazmat diesel fuel fires, lithium ion fires, like for batteries. Like there was that plant in Winston-Salem that went up. I think wasn't a fertilizer plant that was about 3 months ago, Jay?
Yeah, burnt for about a week.
Yeah. I mean, the firefighters just said screw it. They set up monitors and left them running and just abandoned the scene because nobody could get closer. It would probably be useful there. I mean, not only for clearing debris, but if you needed to get in really close, you could send it in there and flow your foam or your water hit hot spots or certain spots that needed to be put out. And I didn't see what exactly type of cameras were installed on it, but I'm assuming if it had a FLIR camera, you could use it for search and rescue as well, like trying to find people that were trapped in spaces and whatnot.
Yeah. One of the really the biggest thing I can find wrong with it is, okay, if there's survivable space in the structure and it comes across an unconscious victim, it ain't gonna be able to pull them out. You're gonna have to send your firefighter in anyway.
Right.
That's no capability of rescue is the only thing that I can really see wrong with it. That and the price tag.
Well,
but
I didn't read that deeply into it. I don't know if they have a robotic arm that they can equip on it that can grab something and pull it with it, but all I know from what the little bit of time I had to read on it was that it had cameras on it and a plow, as well as a turret for that it could flow foam and water. It may very well be able to have an arm put on it, but I don't know for sure.
Well, if you think about it, if it's got a winch, you got to have some way to attach the winch to whatever you want to move. So maybe it does have a robotic arm.
Yeah.
They're just not advertising. So
exactly. To me, it's like anything else in the service. It's a great tool, but it'll never be able to replace a human.
Exactly.
and it's just another thing that people will have to train specifically on how to use. It's just.
You know I want to play with it.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's like drones are becoming more popular in the fire service for aerial reconnaissance of hazmat scenes and other things. It's just not any off the street firefighter can just pick up a joystick and fly a drone around. It's going to take specialized training, just like with this thing. You're going to have to go through specialized classes just to use it. But it's a tool, just like anything else that's in the toolbox, like an axe or a nozzle or anything else that we use.
Yeah, but the price tag. That's another one of them deals, kind of like the electric engine. Not every department's going to be able to have one.
No.
And
but say one department in your county has it, the whole county can share it, and you need an incident. It was like, bring the robot out. Okay,
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing. It's not like every department really needs one. Not every department needs a ladder truck either. But
true.
Every department might want one, but one doesn't need one. It's like my chief on my old volunteer department said. He said we'll never have a ladder truck because number one, we don't have anywhere to keep it, and number two, our district, we don't really need it, and if we do, we've got 2 mutual aid departments right next to us that have a ladder that can bring it. So,
got a couple opinions on that, but I'll save that for another day.
But at $277,000, if one department or even a county, depending on how it's set up, if a county has it, and any department can use it, it's just another resource.
Yeah, I don't get me wrong. I see that aspect.
Yeah.
But being a former truckie, and don't say nothing. Be nice to me. Being a former truckie, there's a lot of things that I see that someone who hasn't been on a department that has a truck company don't see.
Okay, I'll give you that.
And like for instance, anything over 3 floors, whether it's a 3-story house, church, grocery store, mall, anything over 3 floors, you can use a ladder truck, even if it's just for exposure protection. Use it on exposure protection. That frees up a couple sets of hands right there. And I mean, there's just a whole wide world of things that I see that someone who's never worked with a truck company don't see.
No,
I'm not throwing off on anybody, so don't take that the wrong way.
Oh no, I'll give you credit for that. I mean, that's 100% for sure. I mean, I've been on structure fires where it's been a mobile home, and they brought ladder out because it's just easier than trying to throw a roof ladder.
Yeah, and some departments, and I've seen videos in New York Fire Department do this. They have a large body of fire that the hose lines aren't penetrating. They'll take their tower ladder, put it right on ground, extend it out, put it right at ground level, put it right in the door or right in the window, open up and knock the fire down. And then they can go in and mop up, with the hand lines.
Yeah. So using a master stream instead of a hand line.
Exactly. And, that's, another resource that, a ladder truck would be capable of doing.
But yeah, my chief's just his, of my old volunteer department, it's just his opinion was, they're too much to maintain, and we don't really have a place to keep one for our particular department, and we don't really need one. And in the case that we do, because we only have like 3 or 4 buildings that are 2 stories at the most, nothing any bigger than that, and there are 2 departments like right next to us that have them. If we ever need one, we have it, so it's not worth our investment.
What's the quickest response time you think? Well, who's the closest?
York would be closer than, well, depending on where the call is. I mean, I'm talking about, Clover, the buildings we have are all downtown, and they're all
Yeah.
2 stories, so it could come from York or Bethel, depending on what's going on.
Do you have a nursing home as in the district?
Not in our district, no. Bethel has one in their district, and they use their letter a lot for that.
And how about multi-story motel?
Nope.
You're lucky. You're lucky because I'm going to tell you, fellas and fellas, and I'm speaking from experience, from living in a tourist area for 20 years. It's a whole lot easier to get that little old lady that's staying in the 5th floor of the motel to step out on the tower ladder than it is a ground ladder.
Yeah, that's true, and that's kind of another whole issue, another whole story. But a lot of
Yeah,
people just were
we managed to get totally off topic of the robot anyway. We're getting on with truck companies, you know.
right.
I kind of got a soft spot for truck companies, if you haven't noticed.
Yeah, damn trucky.
Well, yeah, the way we worked it, we were 30 days on the truck and
Yeah.
then 30 days on the engine. So I got just as much engine time as I do truck time, but I just enjoyed the truck work better.
And that's cool. I get that. So how about you tell us a little bit about tactics, and we'll wrap this part up.
Well, back in the day, we'll call it Pop's Day. How's that?
Sounds good.
Back in Pop's Day, it was grab the hose, charge the line, go in and get her done, and that worked great. Fires were put out. Then they come along with we need to start fighting fires from exterior.
Let's surround and drown it.
Yeah, surround and drown, hit it hard from the yard. Okay, that's fine. Let's think about if you roll up on an abandoned structure and it's burning pretty good, but there's still survivable space. There's no power going to it, no lightning storms.
I know where you're going with this.
How'd that fire start? You're going to have to go in, so you can't always hit it hard from the yard. You're going to have to go, I was taught in that situation, go in, do a quick search, get out. Okay, now we move up, fast forward a few years. Now they're talking transitional attack. I watched some videos on transitional attacks, and the transitional come along right after I retired out. And basically, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong here, for everybody who's not an actual firefighter, a fire has an inflow and an outflow.
Flow paths, yeah.
Yeah, the flow path. The flow path. Blah, blah, blah. Almost screwed up there. And if you take your line and hit it with the inflow from the yard, let's just say hit it from the exterior, hit it, throw your water into the inflow. That steam will basically go where the flow path is and right out where the outflow's at. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Chris.
Yeah, you're so far on par.
Okay. Now, once you've been able to knock that fire down and then go in, I have no problem with that. It's a safer environment because the fire's been knocked down to a degree. It's not going to be as hot. And the transitional attack to me is the way to go now. And like I said, the transition will come along after I retired out. So I'm still kind of learning on that one. But
That was, yeah, transitional attack is more or less situational. It's go in, assess what you need. If it's good, hit it. If it's, a bad environment, no no viable survivors, just go ahead and pull out and hit it from the exterior.
now I'm gonna be honest with you. If I was still on the department and we roll up and it's the room and contents, I'm gonna pull the line, go in, knock it down, pack up, go home.
Yeah, and that's kind of the current ideal. I'm sorry. That's kind of the current idealism of how it's working right now.
But the hitting it hard from the yard. If you're not careful with what you're doing, you can push that fire throughout the house.
Well, the same thing with venting. Ventilation. If you're not careful, it can be
You
more bad than worse. That's why
exactly.
that's a call I don't want to have to make because that scares me, to be honest with you.
But that's why I say, my way of thinking, my way of teaching, go in, block it off, block it off. Let's just say at the hallway, and push the fire right back to where it started from, and it can be done. How do I know it can be done? I've done it. Pop's done it. Pop's the one that taught me how to do it,
Right.
and I'm the one that's taught my oldest boy how to do it. And it's and if you quote unquote hit it hard from the yard, you run a risk of pushing that fire throughout the structure. And then what have you done? You burnt the people's house down.
Oh.
Where if you'd have went in and stopped it at that room and contents, they'd still have, they'd have to, insurance and everything, repairs and whatnot. But they haven't lost everything.
No, you're right. I agree with you.
And that's the main thing, guys and gals. We're here to save lives and protect property, and wake everyone up at 2 o'clock in the morning with a cue. But that's another story.
If I'm up, you're up.
Yeah, I'm up, you're up. That's right. All jokes aside, we're here to save lives, protect property. How are we protecting property if we're pushing the fire through the house and the people that live in the home lose everything? That's my pet peeve on it. Chris, how about you?
I agree with you 100% on that. It's just one of those trendy things that's, starts out one way, goes to a different way, and it's going to circle back, and they'll realize that, interior is the way to go. But, I mean, it's just like anything, it's situational. There's situational where exterior attacks are 100% better versus an interior attack. I think that call needs to be made situationally during a size up.
Yeah, now, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you roll up to the scene and there's fire blowing out of every window and every door. You go in and try to put the fire out. No, that's the surrounding ground all day.
Yeah.
But if you can make a stop and make a good stop, go for it.
Right.
But just remember, if you when you go in interior, if everything starts going black, 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 orange, 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 get out.
Yeah.
I hope everyone catches the fun there.
Mm-hmm. So go ahead and wrap up the segment for us there, Jay.
Well, folks, we've discussed a lot of stuff in the past, however long we've been discussing it. I'm sure that everybody has their own opinion of, what we have tried to put across to you for, thought, education, um, learning, however you want to call it. Um, we're not trying to tell you to go against your department's SOPs when we talk about the tactics. Um, whatever your department's.
Well, with that, anything we talk about on the show is educational and informational only. You know, always follow your SOPs and
Exactly, exactly. Um, read. I would suggest reading books about the history of the fire service in the United States. I mean, honestly, how many of you know that Benjamin Franklin, the same guy that flew the kite with the key on it, organized the first fire department in the United States?
true, true. And always learn something from every call you go on. I mean, if you go on a call and you don't learn any something, you're not doing something right.
Exactly.
Because no two calls are right are alike.
That's one thing that my dad used to teach is the fact that you know you go on a call today and you do something, and then 10 years down the road you go to another call and it's like, okay, we had a call one time before similar to this. Let's try this because it worked on the other call. Everything that you learn or do on a fire scene, put it in a little folder in the back of your mind for future reference, because you'd be surprised at how much that will come back to you for later on. It's the experience thing that we talked about in our last show. Experience is one thing that you can teach, but you have to experience the experience
Right.
to get the full gist of it, if that's the correct word I'm looking for.
For sure.
Read the history of the fire department. You'd be amazed at some of the stuff you'll read. I'll give you a quick for instance. In the 1800s, in the town of New York, not the city of New York, but the town of New York, it was required by everybody in the town to have leather buckets, a minimum of 2 leather buckets, and every night put them on the porch. So if there was a fire, all they had to do was run by and get the buckets, go to the water point, and start the bucket brigade.
Yep. Hence the creation of the bucket brigade.
Yeah. And there was what they call insurance emblems. There's a little metal emblem. Remember, you seen them when we went to the museum there at Emmitsburg.
Yeah.
That if you didn't have that emblem on your house, they wouldn't put your fire out.
Yep. They just let it burn.
Just lots and lots and lots of amazing stuff that you can read and learn. And it's like I mentioned last episode. Learn your craft, master your craft. Part of learning your craft is learning the history of it. So, you got anything else, Chris?
Not really. I don't.
Alrighty, fellows and fellettes, this is the part of the show that we call the Pro Tip of the Week. This is where we leave you with some of our knowledge and experiences so you can go home safely to the ones that you love. Today's topic is, Chris?
Firefighter cancer. And firefighter cancer is the leading cause of line-of-duty deaths in the fire service. At the 2022 IAFF Fallen Firefighters Memorial, almost 75% of the names added to the wall, 348 out of 469 were members who had died from occupational cancer. The stigma that dirty gear makes you look salty or seasoned needs to change. Decon your gear and shower after every haul. Wash your gear in an extractor to get rid of carcinogens and other hazards, particulates, after all major fires, and clean your truck cabs and tools as well. And for you volleys out there, don't store your dirty gear in your car and take home those cancer-causing agents to your family. Wear proper PPE, including particulate filtering no-mix hoods. And don't leave your family early for something that is preventable. Remember, firefighter cancer is real. So my final thoughts on the show this week are, change comes whether we like it or not. It's better to embrace it and adapt than to spend your time fighting change. Jay, what are your final thoughts?
We discussed a whole lot of topics tonight, and we've gotten on a couple of soapboxes and carried on with it. But to boil it all down the best that I know how, don't be afraid to think outside of the box. Roll with the changes. Roll with the technology. There's always going to be a place in the fire department for tradition. So don't be afraid to go with the new thoughts and technologies.
Okay, don't forget to tune into our next episode where we will talk about some of the challenges facing new members of the service from the perspective of young new candidates. Also, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. We're listed on all the major services, and we'll see you next time.
10-7, dude.
10-7. Have a good one.
2 in.
2 out. You've been listening to Hose Jockeys Unite. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and please tell your friends about us. And always, always remember, even truckies need love too.